Hello and welcome to Extraordinary with me, James Wallis, the podcast that shines a light on ordinary people who have gone on to do and see extraordinary things. And in this episode, he's back, it's part 3, and it's all about Tal Booker.
To some people, I'm quite straight presenting.
Massively.
My boyfriend would argue with you that I'm really not. I was tattooing quite a high profile person, and he was talking to me about his girlfriend, and he said, "Do you have a bird at the moment?" And my answer was, no, not at the moment. There's times like even now or during this podcast, I'm like monitoring my own voice and how I sound because I don't want to sound a certain way.
No, you're
And I'm not doing it consciously, but I'm definitely doing it unconsciously. You know, if I get excited about something, I have to monitor like how excited I am. With these things comes that flip side of wanting to sustain the straight presenting. And lo and behold, not to my surprise, I was diagnosed with, I hugely struggle to maintain friendships. God knows how you start a new friendship, because I don't fucking know. The reality is I have a lot of people in my life that I love a lot, that I don't really have that much of a friendship with anymore. I'm living as honestly as I ever have and as possible. I still have the anxiety as if I'm hiding a £100 a day drug problem. I've definitely been shut down when I've said that I feel this way because I'm an addict and I'm an attention seeker and I'm always looking for something to excuse me of the way that I am.
Before we begin this episode, I just wanted to remind everyone that this podcast is not sponsored or monetized in any way, which is why I've signed up to buymeacoffee.com, which helps creators like me do a bit of crowdfunding towards the ongoing costs and maintenance of the podcast. I've set my price at just £3, so it literally is the price of the coffee. So if you did want to contribute, the link will be in the show notes and of course in my link tree across all of my socials. Lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe from wherever you're listening from. And if you enjoy the podcast at the very end, please leave a rating and a review because it just helps the podcast keep going and growing. Without further ado, enjoy the show.
So, part 3, here we are again. You're essentially a co-host of the Extraordinary podcast. But it's actually been 18 months. We were both just trying to work out how long it's been. And it almost feels like this is like autobiographical now. Yeah. Like we're growing up with you.
Those Billie Eilish interviews where they do one after the other and she just gets like a little bit more depressed each time. That's what I feel like.
Is that what to expect? Is that what we're going to have this time?
Yeah.
Are you gradually getting more depressed, or are we going?
Probably. I don't know.
Okay, well, I guess it's for the listeners and the viewers to conclude for themselves. Yeah. So we did, like I said, we spoke in August 2021. So that was actually 18 months ago. I don't know about you, but I feel like the last 3 years, like we've just blinked and it's happened.
Yeah. So we did the recovery episode, right? Mm-hmm. We were talking about recovery. And so actually I came into recovery in 2019, which seems a lot longer ago than I thought. Yeah.
Wow.
August of
so it's
2019.
Still quite fresh.
Yeah, it's been 3.5 years.
Because I feel what happened was we had episode 1 and you completely opened up.
Yeah.
Like you talked about your using, you talked about what it's like to be in addiction, therapy, and then at the very end you like planted this seed about sexuality. Yeah. And I think everyone was like, we'll have more of that please. And then we did part 2 where you talked about your sexuality. Yeah. And even then, that was 18 months ago, and it was still relatively, you had only been out for the best part of 12 months. And we spoke a lot about our feelings, our attitude towards straight privilege, what it was like to grow up gay, how we feel about shame. Yeah. And now we're in part 3, and I guess it's a bit of an unknown as to what we're going to uncover in this episode. Yeah. But I guess to start off, when you listen back to your previous 2 episodes, how does it make you feel? What do you think about?
I really struggle, especially the sexuality one. I don't know if it's because I can see myself and I really struggle with seeing myself on camera, but I can see how like impassioned I was. And I think I don't know if I had as much right as I did to be as passionate as I was having just come out. Does that make sense? Like not having been through anything.
I think you've been through loads.
No, I have, but I think I feel like I was almost like a bit self-righteous in the way that I was talking, when really I hadn't lived as a gay person or not a straight person for that long, and therefore like I didn't really, I don't know, like there's something about it that I kind of struggle with. I don't know if it's generally, again, just seeing myself being impassioned by anything that like I struggle with. I kind of feel like I needed to like pipe down a bit.
Pipe down?
Yeah.
But I feel like we were kind of, because of all the episodes I've done, and this will be episode 50 something, like I've never been able to have as much of a raw conversation about sexuality as I have with you. And I feel like there is a lot, and you taught me a lot, and I took it all into my therapy room, and I unleashed this wrath of like newfound anger.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay. And for me, I feel okay with being angry, and I think it's relatively healthy, because I think what I've taken from that is I've put a spotlight, or tried to put a spotlight on concepts like straight privilege.
Yeah.
On concepts like equality and diversity, which people often just are throwaway words.
Yeah.
And actually, I think, I was doing a photo shoot at the weekend, and I happened to mention that I was doing an episode with you.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh my God, it's so hard growing up gay, isn't it?" I listened to those episodes, and it made me realise just how difficult it is, because at the time, our peers, who are now our really close friends, had no idea the pain and suffering that we were going through. And lots of kind of LGBT boys and girls all over the world continue to do, even in 2023. And I feel like your episodes have really helped put a spotlight on that and added some colour to what it was like.
Well, I mean, I hope so. I think I personally don't believe I'm as angry now as I was, and I think that's not because my feelings around what I was angry about has changed. I think for me, it's not healthy for me to be angry, and I kind of take a bit of like my recovery head into my feelings towards my own sexuality and I guess sexuality in general, and that is like being resentful about anything is not healthy, because it eats us up inside. And I think that, we have to make peace with these things, not purely for the thing that we're making peace with, but for ourselves. Because otherwise, the only person that's really suffering through that anger again is you. Like, the world is not burning because you're angry. Do you know what I mean? No. And equally, nothing has changed for me either. And there's still a lot of things that happen that make me angry. I still have conversations with people, and they're talking about something, and they're like, "Oh, that's gay," and it's something so far removed from the sexuality of the thing.
And how do you respond to that?
I just have to ignore it.
Do you ignore it?
Yeah, because I think you have to look at where it's coming from, because my experience is that the people that use the words like that, or the ones that I've come across, are, they are allies. They're not shaming me. They just don't have a better word to use, and it doesn't make it right. But I really think that,
or they do it for comedic effect, I find.
Yeah, I think,
because they know they're in the company, and they kind of want to stir the pot a little bit.
And I have learned, again, through my recovery, to not give my peace away so easily as what I used to. Like, I value my peace, and if I'm giving it away to everyone that says something is gay, then I'm the only one that's going to suffer.
Yeah. It's a good concept, that, giving your peace away.
Yeah, and someone said it once in a meeting about how this lady had really bad road rage. Oh God, this lady had really bad road rage, and every time she would get in the car, she would give her peace away to someone else that would just go about their day, and they didn't even realise that they had taken it, and the only person that's suffering is her. And so that's definitely a concept that has stuck with me, that I don't want to give my peace away to things that don't deserve it anymore. And the reality is, if we're giving our peace away to that, it'd be all the time. Like I remember not that long ago that I got into like an altercation with someone driving, and he called me a faggot, and it's just like,
where do we, like, what are you meant to do with that?
first of all, I was like, how does he even know? Like, what am I doing that has, whether he did or not, I was like, it really touched a nerve, obviously, because it is such a weaponized word. So that really it upset me, because this person that doesn't know me has used a word that touches so heavily on so many aspects of my life that is really like, it's
but also
just
taking
really,
you out of that for a second,
yeah.
It's also quite symbolic of what is out there in society as well.
Definitely.
There are men out there
definitely
who are weaponising the words, and therefore perpetuating
just purely off the back of me not letting him into the lane that he wanted to be in. Bearing in mind it was my right of way, but that's
of course,
a different
obviously.
part of the story. And there's so many different aspects of that internalized homophobia that I'm still triggered by. My boyfriend calls cigarettes fags, and when he says that, when he's like, "Oh, can I have a fag?" I genuinely feel my whole body tighten up. Because like that word for me is scary. And for him, I don't think he's quite experienced his sexuality or in the same way as I do, or maybe doesn't have as much shame around it, or hasn't been subject to as much, I don't know what the word is, discrimination, abuse than I have. And even I have not been subjected to as much as maybe you have, or the next person has. But I still am aware of it. But I think to answer your question, even if I don't know if there was a question, I'm not as angry, and that's because I just don't think I have the energy to be, and because I pick my battles, and I think you've got to, rather than take on the world, I think for me I've got to start within and start kind of looking at my own feelings rather than what the world puts on me, if that makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense. I don't think my therapist put it as eloquently as give your peace away, but he definitely told me to just breathe, and just like really check in with yourself, ground yourself, to like just ask the question: is it worth it?
But I think interestingly, when you put it as giving your peace away, you don't want to give something away. You're the owner. It's yours, and you don't want to give it away to someone that doesn't matter. So I think it's a really nice concept.
I learned a similar concept because I find myself being the red-headed, hot-headed person that I am. Like I'm a fiery red. Like I'm quick. And I like people to be quick, and I'm very quick to bite someone's hand off. If they annoy me, I'll be like, fuck you, hate you, why'd you do that, you're so incompetent, why are you so inefficient, are you incapable? And like no filter. And it caused me problems because it turned out on a boys' weekend, all the straight boys and I went away to Rain for the weekend over Christmas, and we were just having a bit of a deep, meaningful conversation, and they were saying, James, actually we find it difficult to be vulnerable or to like really say what we think or mean because we're scared of having our heads bitten off. And it really made me think, because every time I jump down someone's throat, metaphorically, I'm giving my credits away. People are losing trust. It's like bits of trust that is eroding.
And then I guess when you do have something to say, it's not listened to as much, maybe, because
you lose your authority. So it's really interesting about, because we see it in sort of mainstream media the whole time, this concept of I'm just me, I just say what I think, and but actually as I've matured, that is 100% the wrong thing to do. Sometimes it's not the best idea to say what's on your head.
I think there's a lot of power in pausing.
Let it sit with you.
And just kind of gathering your thoughts, and I think people say it. People have said it to me a few times that they think that I'm quite, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but they think I'm. Someone said that when I speak, they listen because I don't necessarily speak unnecessarily, and that's not purposeful. That's just because I like I think a lot about everything all the time, and so like I don't really have a choice, but I do tend to think before I speak, because I just don't think anything particularly good comes from not doing that, because then you get kind of brandished as hot-headed and quick with your words, and then I think it carries less weight when actually if you have something of value to say, the pause is like a really important part of getting that message across, because like you kind of let everything simmer down and then you go in with what it is that you need to say. Maybe
you listen to respond.
Exactly.
Not listen to respond, the other way around. You're absorbing what someone's saying and then reflecting on it and then speaking, whereas people like me are just like, oh, I've got a point.
But do you think that comes from maybe not being listened to?
Maybe. I don't know. I think I've always been an extrovert. And I've always been quite gobby.
Yeah, but I think that could also lend itself to maybe not being listened to, because if you've always had so much to say, then maybe it kind of has gone unnoticed, because it's like, oh, James is just speaking again.
Yeah. I think I people, when they say to you, like when you speak, people listen. I think with me, they're like, he talks a lot, and if you listen really carefully, sometimes he'll say something really good. Like, I think I'm that sort of person, which I don't want to be. I'd much rather be someone that commands the room, and people are like, everything James says is golden, profound, and I'm an orator. But unfortunately, I'm not, and my team at work will testify for that. They'll just be like, oh, he's off again. And I'll go on a rant. Because I love a rant as well. But no, it's interesting, what you said about the content that we put out last time. You described it as angry. Maybe it was a little bit angry, but I think it served its purpose in us talking about issues that are really important. And I think we received a shit ton of comments, even on TikTok now. Like,
I think there's definitely a place for that anger. I just don't know if that anger is right to be within me, if that makes sense.
No, it's never healthy to hold on to anger. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's not anger. Maybe it was just an off-the-cuff reflection that we had that just so happened to resonate with a lot of people. We were talking, for anyone listening and you haven't listened to the previous episodes, it was about both Tal and I wanting to be straight, essentially, or talking about how much easier life is if you're straight. And that's
which is a fact. Like, there's no arguing. It's a fact.
I think you and I are just going to have to fight that battle by ourselves, though, because I do find when I say it, even now to my gay friends, they're just like, what the fuck are you on about? We have such a better life. We have way more fun and all this stuff.
But it's all relative. Like, life is built for straight white men. The world is built for straight white men. Like, that's just a fact. And obviously some people's experiences are different, and some people have not had specific traumas or not had specific issues or shame growing up, and that's great. But I think the general consensus is that it's hard to be gay, especially through your adolescence and and growing up. Like, that's just a fact.
I mean, it's wild. Some of the conversations I'm having at 32 to my straight friends, I hope would be mind-blowing. I mean, I sat in therapy last week. Like, I'm now in a relationship. I haven't told my parents about it.
You didn't tell me either before.
You didn't ask.
I thought you would have mentioned.
Anyway, we'll discuss offline. I went into therapy and I was like, how do I tell my parents? And we had to have an hour-long session that I paid for a 32-year-old guy to ask someone how I should tell my parents that I'm in a relationship. That is not something a straight person has to even think about.
No.
In fact, it would be celebrated. It would be a cause for parties, happiness. For me, it's clouded in shame and trauma.
So what is the advice from the therapist then?
Well, it's very specific to my set of circumstances, but it's do it in a way that's not going to be overwhelming. Because last time in very James Wallis fashion, I in my mum's words, dropped a bombshell. When I came out, it was a text, and it was, I hope, it was words to the effect of like, I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but I am gay. It's not something I would choose to do.
Wow.
I hope you can forgive me.
Really?
And then it was months of tears, tantrums.
Wow. So you apologised for it?
Profusely. I still do. It's almost like I am the embodiment of shame on the family. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But certainly in my reflections, that's definitely how I perceive myself and my role in my family. It's kind of like the gay one. This, in spite of top grades, a first class degree, all of that stuff means nothing. It's the fact that I am not attracted to women and I can't give my parents the Jewish wedding and the kids that they potentially wanted. Again, whose problem that is, I don't know. I don't know who carries the burden of that. But the point is...
Well, I don't think you do.
Well, quite, but I do. That's something I need to...
Yeah. That's something you do, but not because you should.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And the point is that what 32-year-old man needs to see a therapist to ask for advice on how you should tell your parents you're in a relationship?
I'd argue that probably a few.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And listen, there are all sorts of situations. There are kind of all sorts of bigoted families out there. You know, there are blended families that people might take issue with. Religion comes into it a lot of the time. People falling pregnant outside of wedlock. You know, and so there's all sorts of things that happen out there. And maybe I'm the product of an unfortunate, maybe I was born too soon. Like, my parents were born in the 50s and the 60s and life was very different.
Or maybe you were born to show them a different way.
Yeah, all different sort of ways of looking at it, which I find interesting. But in your last, when we were talking about this last time,
I feel like I've just started interviewing you.
You did, and I definitely am not someone who likes to be interviewed. I asked, you positioned your situation that you were currently mourning the death of your heterosexual life. Have you finished your mourning period? How do you reflect on that kind of framing?
I think the initial stage of mourning is over for sure, but I think like grief, it never really ends. It just kind of changes. I think there's definitely situations that arise that I kind of feel sad about, but I don't necessarily know if I feel sad for myself, or maybe I feel sad for my mum that my mum's not going to have something that she wanted.
That's what I just said.
That she wanted, or I think exactly like mourning, it ebbs and flows, and sometimes you mourn a little bit harder. But I think generally speaking, like, I've definitely made peace with what was lost and what now is, because I know in myself how much happier I am, and my life now definitely feels like it's the life that I should be living, whereas the other one was just too painful to be normal and to be the life that I should be living. And I don't know whether we want to talk about God or that sort of stuff.
I love a religious chat,
but it's not even religious, it's more spiritual. Like, I don't believe that that's the life I was meant to be living.
What, a heterosexual life?
Yeah, well, obviously it's not, because it's not. But I just mean like it was just too painful for me.
And you said that you hate labels. Do you still hate labels? Because you were like, I think the words were, I don't know what I am.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that which is still true, but for all intents and purposes, I have a boyfriend, so...
Is it easier to just say, I'm gay?
No, it's not easier. It's I still have the same issues now as I had it then. It's easier for other people. Yeah. It's not easier for me. A friend of mine I was at like a work thing, and there was a few people that I work with, and a friend of mine who kind of is also within the company said that she referred to me as a gay man. I was offended. I was offended by that. And again, I don't know.
Did you have a right to be?
No, because again, by definition, that's what I am. And it might not be
arguably, she shouldn't have made an assumption about your sexual orientation.
Sure, but that, you know, that is on the face of it, that's what I am. And I think it's kind of like misgendering someone. Like if someone assumes the gender of someone else, then that obviously causes harm to that person. But I think if that person hasn't made it known what gender they
or what their sexual orientation is.
Yeah, then how is the other person to know?
Yeah, this is the whole. I mean, it was in the news today about kind of Lady Bird books. I mean, we had the whole Roald Dahl thing last week, and people are saying, "Oh, you know, it's riddled with people assuming other people's pronouns and all this stuff." And it's like, I'm not sure what my views are on that. Interestingly enough, but I do feel like we need to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah, but I think it's really easy for us to say that when it's not us that are being
misgendered.
But
you were.
Yeah, I was, but I also think I wasn't, because I think my confusion shouldn't be someone else's confusion as well, and it's not.
See, that's different to what you said last time.
Yeah, and that's why I struggle with the discussion we had last time, is because I think I've grown a lot, and I see things from a different point of view now, having spent 18 months living in it, whereas there I hadn't been in it enough time, which is why I said about me kind of piping down, because I hadn't actually lived it for long enough to kind of have a solid opinion on it. But I think my own opinion is probably as confused as I sound, because I'm not actually sure whether I am gay or I'm not, or whether someone else has the right to refer to me as gay or whether they don't, because again,
and maybe it doesn't matter.
And I actually think it doesn't matter. I think really the crux of it is that's work I've got to do, and that's not the work that someone else should have to do to make me feel better. Because again, I think it all comes from the intention, and her intention was not to offend me. Her intention was just to
introduce you. Yeah.
And the fact that it offended me shows me more where my work lies rather than where her work should be. And I think like a lot of these things, it all comes from within.
So how does being in a gay relationship with a man feel? Like, do you have any issues with like holding hands down the street? Do you upload Instagram posts of yourselves together?
So interestingly, I think publicly, like, I'm very much the same. There has been occasions where I've been a bit fearful. So there was one occasion, I can't remember if it was Pride or New Year's Eve, when I was walking with Robin through Soho, and obviously Soho is quite a gay area, but there's a I can't remember exactly where we were, but there was an area where we were walking through which was really dark, and there was a few kind of questionable people kind of loitering, and I, for the first time ever, I felt a bit scared, and I didn't want to hold his hand. I didn't want to do anything which would make us a target, which was a bit of an eye-opener for me, because I'd never really felt that way, and that was quite a while ago now. So, you know, if it was different, I don't know if it would be different now. But we were actually having this conversation not that long ago around Valentine's Day, because he pointed out that I didn't post about him on Valentine's Day, and
this is why social media is so bad.
And my honest answer was that, as a tattoo artist, I don't know how clients would feel if they knew that I had a boyfriend, and that is the honest truth. Is that if I was a straight man and I had the choice between a gay tattoo artist and a straight one, I would probably choose the straight one. So being so early on in my career, I'm really wary of doing anything that might hinder that. And he could not fathom my reasoning, and saying it out loud made me feel kind of silly, but that's genuinely how I feel, that I don't want to give someone a reason to not book me. And it's
Sorry,
kind of sad.
Can you just walk me through the logic of why a straight tattoo artist is more appealing?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think it, maybe it's internalized homophobia that someone may have that they don't realize they have. Maybe it's an unconscious bias that they may have. Yeah. But I just don't believe that it wouldn't be there. Because if I think about my own unconscious bias about certain things, and I have them, and I'm able to call myself out on the fact that I have them. I love my job, and I think it comes back to fear, and I think I'm scared of being perceived in a certain way. Like there has been occasions where I was tattooing. There's one specific occasion where I was tattooing quite a high profile person, and he was talking to me about his girlfriend, and he said, do you have a bird at the moment? And my answer was, no, not at the moment. And logically I can feel in that moment how wrong that is. But I'm just not ready to have that conversation yet with certain people in certain environments.
I came out when I was 18, and I'm 32 now, and I still do the same.
It's really sad, because not only am I denying my own truth, I'm denying my partner his reality and of the fact that he is with me.
And the wider LGBT community and the pride movement and what we
all
stand
of it,
for. Yeah,
all of it. Yeah. That's in that moment, I'm denouncing all of it because of the shame that I feel. And this person that asked me that, I have no doubt is a very accepting, open, loving person, and would have absolutely no issues. And again, it highlights to me the work that I need to be doing, because I think maybe to some people,
you don't want to embarrass him, right?
No, I don't want to embarrass him.
I always think like,
of course I don't.
Actually I'm gay, and then he will likely feel quite shit about himself.
I don't. I think the reality is that to some people I'm quite straight presenting, which
massively,
my boyfriend would argue with you that I'm really not. Like, he would tell me that I'm really not.
And what's the gayest thing you do?
I don't know.
Well, I just went for a piss in your bathroom, and it's definitely not a straight man's bathroom.
Why is that? There's all the stuff that I've got in there.
You've got what is a jade roller?
Yeah. I do I was jade rolling actually just before you came. But I think to some people I'm quite straight presenting, which naturally I would say is great. But then why is it great? Like, why does it matter? But I think...
Well, the irony is, it was always said to me that if you are... and lots of people in the LGBT community would always say that if you are a straight passing gay man, you have a privilege.
Yeah.
Because you can get away with not being beaten up on the street or whatever, which totally get.
Yeah. Well, apparently to that guy that called me a faggot in the car, I wasn't...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the flip side of that is all of this stuff where we have to have awkward... squirmish, icky conversations with people like the mortgage advisor.
Like
every day,
kind of coming out. Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say you come out like once a day
minimum.
And I'm very aware of. We were talking about it before we started recording about my own privilege and how I'm lucky and a lot of things, and I think that I do have that. I do tend to get some of that straight privilege, but that also comes from years of suppressing who I really am. Because there's times like even now or during this podcast, I'm like monitoring my own voice and how I sound because I don't want to sound a certain way.
No, you're not.
And I'm not doing it I'm not doing it consciously, but I'm definitely doing it unconsciously. And like, you know, if I get excited about something, I have to monitor like how excited I am, or like, and so with these things comes that flip side of wanting to sustain the straight presenting thing. And it really does come from a place of practice, and having been straight for so long, that is now something that is a privilege that I get, but also comes from a lot of pain by not being able to be who I am inside, you know, like not being able to find certain things interesting, like not being able to watch Say Yes to the Dress, for example, around people, because like, do you know what I mean? Like having to monitor those things that I actually find interesting. I'm not saying that I find Say Yes to the Dress interesting.
You're self-censoring yourself. It's okay.
You know, but you know what I mean.
I know
though.
what you mean.
Like,
we constantly have to self-censor. Always. We're editing our whole lives, and I admire people on Instagram who are like RuPaul fanatics and have no shame at all. Then
like I have no interest in watching Drag Race or any of that stuff, and I don't know if that's because I genuinely have no interest, or because I've never allowed myself to be in touch with that part of
like
the community.
Yourself in the culture.
Like
of
I've never been to a gay bar. I've been to a lesbian bar once and I had a great time. I've never been to a gay bar. I've never done any of the. I've never really been to Pride outside of a Soho House Pride party.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And it's very much, and I think the gay community in particular, the gay male community, have a lot to answer for as well, because I feel like we encourage each other to be, you know, excessive in every single way possible when it comes to like hyper masculinity. Yeah. As in, like, you line up a bunch of Soho House gay men, and then you line up a bunch of like straight men, and it's like the gays are much hencher, prettier, better dressed, and it's like they will outdo you in every way, and then it's breeding this kind of culture of trying to like keep up,
for
the
sure,
whole time.
I don't really, you know, fall in the category of, in my own personal opinion, of being within the gay community, even though I am obviously part of it
by default.
But I would also say that there's a lot of discrimination within that. Like if you're not gay enough, or you're not pretty enough, or you're not slim enough, or you don't dress well enough, like exactly. Like exactly. There's so many of those things that kind of you don't really make the cut unless you tick these boxes. So, you can shout from the rooftops, but if the people that are kind of perpetuating this idea are not looking at themselves, then it doesn't get any better. It's just me and you. It's just me and you talking about it. Like the thirst traps for me, like I don't really like. I see them, but I don't really participate in that side of the gay culture. That's just not where I position myself.
It's a shame that it is part of it.
Yeah, of course.
That's the thing. So that's like a nice segue, because you've obviously had, I don't know, 2 years of being out there, 1 year being in a relationship. What are your dealings? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings towards the community at large? Like after the podcast episodes, you know, Tal Booker's out, Tal Booker's gay. You've got a following on Instagram. How many DMs did you get?
Not that many. I mean,
go on, give me a number.
No, I don't know. There's not a number to give you. Like, I don't think it's.
Do you like the attention?
Not really. Like, don't get me wrong. It's flattering, but like, it's not helpful.
No.
It's not like I'm not looking for anything, so therefore it's wasted on me. And I wouldn't say I get more attention now than I ever have. It's just shifted from women to men.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think I'm any more desirable now than I ever was, but you know what I mean. It's not really something that I indulge in.
Yeah. I guess the nice thing is that, I don't know about you, but I certainly still to this day get loads of messages about your podcast, and particularly about like the coming out. So I think that's nice. That
it's really nice to know it's done something for someone or someone, and I think
people come out.
Yeah, and I think for me the struggle that I always had was never hearing a story like mine, because maybe if I had done, my story would be different. But it's nice to know that people can resonate, and it then helps them in their journey, be it really small and insignificant or quite big.
Definitely,
it's always helpful.
And a little bit about your recovery, because I know recovery kind of never ends as such.
I wish it would.
You wish it?
I wish it would.
How many days now? Or how
I don't know how many. Years? I haven't checked how many days, but
a lot.
Over 3.5 years.
Yeah. Does it get any easier?
It definitely gets easier.
Do you think about it every day?
I don't think about it every day. It definitely gets easier. It actually, and I was talking with my mum about it today, because she said, like, you know, if I'm having a bad time, like, is that when I feel that I need it? But actually, it's the opposite.
Question,
like
Mum.
when things are going well for me, that's probably when I'm most at risk, because that's when
you think you're a bit more invincible, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and the whole thinking around, you know, it's not a problem for me anymore, kind of comes into it. You know, when I feel shit or I'm having a bad time, like, there's nothing I could do that involves alcohol or drugs or gambling or any of those things that will make it any better. It will only make it worse, and I'm very, very aware of that. But on the flip side, you know, when you're having a good time, do sometimes drugs make things a bit better and you have more fun? Maybe they do. I'm not at this stage willing to find out.
Hopefully never.
Yeah, well, hopefully never. But my relationship with recovery has definitely changed, in the sense that as my life has changed so much, I've definitely needed to find a place for it. And every kind of time my life changes or something big happens, and I guess the biggest change for me recently has been, well, there's been a couple, but one of them has been my career change. Like, I've had to find a way for recovery to fit into my new way of working and my new schedule and stuff like that.
From a logistics perspective?
From a logistics perspective, you know, when I was working 9 to 5, you know, Monday to Friday, I could have a very set schedule of when I could do my meetings or when I could find the time for recovery. And now that's changed to, you know, for example, I'd go to a meeting on a Saturday and a Sunday, and that would be very easy for me. And now I work on weekends, so the days that I'm off vary, and therefore the time that I can go to meetings is different, and my relationship with meetings has changed. Therefore, I need to find meetings that I feel comfortable in, and it's just like it's changed basically. And you know, I don't know if I'm at the point where I still believe that recovery is lifelong. I definitely feel that certain circumstances require it to be lifelong, but you know, we'll kind of get to why maybe I think that my relationship with recovery may change in the future. I'm not saying it will change. And also, I'm not necessarily talking about sobriety, I'm just talking about recovery. Like, sobriety for me right now is a non-negotiable. Like, that will not change. Again, is it forever? I don't know, but
can you have one without the other? As in, like, if sobriety is sacred?
I don't think you can't have recovery.
Can you have sobriety without doing the meetings?
I think you can. I do think you can, because I've seen it. Whether I'm able to obtain that, I don't know. Because again, like, we're all different, and everyone's journey is different. Like, I don't know if I will be able to have sobriety without recovery. I certainly know that you can't have recovery without sobriety, because sobriety is the foundation in which recovery is built on. So it's all kind of meaningless without sobriety from drink and drugs, and for me, more things than that. But it's definitely evolved.
And then, and I don't know if this is like an unfair question or inappropriate for that matter, but I'd imagine that the whole concept of recovery is not less so sobriety. It's like you were channeling your energy into kind of removing yourself from using. Is it fair to suggest that because you are a little bit more self-assured, you're in a relationship, that actually the triggers are not there as much, and you have kind of your energy is now going into your career, so it's kind of taking up less energy in your life?
Yeah, but I think addiction is addiction, and it can be to anything,
and it can rear its head.
It can rear its head at any point, and also it's a disease of dis-ease, not being at ease. So it can come up at any moment, and the using is the symptom of the disease. So it's not actually the thing itself. You know, I used because I was so uncomfortable internally that's how the symptom showed itself. The symptom of my disease showed itself with drugs and alcohol, whereas the symptom of a cold is a runny nose. Do you know what I mean? It's not the thing.
Got it.
You need to attack. You need to fix the cold rather than the runny nose. So it's there's a lot in it. I think recovery for me has always been a bridge to normal living. Recovery, in my opinion, is supposed to be a bridge to normal living. It shouldn't be your whole life.
And maybe you're closer to the other.
And I definitely, without a doubt, I'm definitely. Some days I'm off the bridge. Some days I'm in as in like I'm in the normal living. Yeah. Some days I'm a bit further along, and some days I'm standing in the middle of like a wobbly bridge. Do you know what I mean? Like it every day is different, but I think for the most part I've done a lot of work, and I'm able to live on the other side of the bridge.
That's what I mean about the kind of your life circumstances though, because I'd imagine you being in a relationship makes it a little bit easier because
relationships have their own problems.
I'm talking about from a clubbing, dating.
Yeah, okay, sure. Like but then I never that was like clubbing and dating and stuff were never triggers for me to use anyway. A therapist once said to me, I never had a drug problem, I had a Tal problem. And I'm always going to have the Tal problem because I'm always going to be me. So you just get better at dealing with yourself and learning more about yourself and
liking yourself.
Yeah, and liking yourself and you know and nurturing the parts of you that maybe you don't like as much and stuff. But the reality is I'm always going to have a Tal problem because for as long as I'm alive, I'm always going to be me. So that's never going to go away. And I think when you accept that, that's when recovery may get a bit easier.
I think everyone in life, or I'd like to think that everyone in life goes through a phase where they do some form of work, whether it's as formal as what you've done through therapy, recovery, doing the steps and everything, or they just do some introspection.
Yeah.
I think, me going into my 30s, almost my mid-30s.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking weird. I'm having deeper conversations with people now.
Yeah.
Like, people are having actual real shit to talk about. And I think maybe you just started a bit earlier than most people. But I'd like to think that everyone at some point in their life will hit some form of roadblock, unfortunately. Because
I think it's a nice thought. I think I'm not sure if it's necessarily true that everyone will.
I want to have some sort of awakening, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be as big of an awakening as maybe you or I have had, but and that's not to say we're so great because we've had big awakenings.
It's not a blessing.
Ignorance is bliss.
100%.
Ignorance is absolutely bliss, and sometimes I'd love to be those people that kind of just move through life and never really have anything big happen, or not even never have anything big happen, but like it never shake them like to the core, like that makes them need to look at everything.
It's almost back to your inner peace. It's almost as though like you're not even aware of how peaceful you are.
Yeah, exactly.
You haven't got any of it to give away.
Yeah,
and just live in a state of tranquility. But that's not life, and that's not kind of, as everyone always says, it's the journey, isn't it? And the experiences that kind of you have to go through.
Yeah.
Out of interest, if I could give you a straight pill,
yeah, would I take it?
Would you take it?
I don't think I would anymore. No, how can I say that when I
left the party?
Yeah, but I couldn't say that when I have the relationship that I do. Yeah, I mean that's the truth. Like, and it's not to say everything's perfect, because it isn't. But I just think that what my journey has given me is invaluable, and no pill could kind of, I don't know what the word is, but like no pill could compare to what I have now.
Even though you said, I don't know, at some point in this podcast that without a shadow of a doubt, being gay is harder than being straight.
For sure, but you know, just because it's harder doesn't make it
better.
Not as good.
I get that.
Smooth seas never made a good sailor.
God, you're just full of the metaphors.
Yeah, but it's true though. Like, I wouldn't take it.
I love that.
I assume that you would still.
But maybe it's my obstinance or my stubbornness that I will never shake the trauma of what, you know, the last 32 years have given me. And would I have, in retrospect, loved to have lived a heteronormative, heterosexual life? Yes, it might be boring. Yes, I wouldn't have been able to go to the parties.
Yeah.
Hook up with the number of people I've hooked up with.
Yeah.
Have the number of toxic relationships. Yeah. Have these podcasts. My sexuality, for all intents and purposes, unfortunately, has defined me.
Yeah.
And that's not something I ever wanted. Or thought I would say out loud, but it's why this podcast exists.
Yeah.
And it's something that I talk about all day, every day to anyone that will listen.
Yeah.
So yes, it's given me identity and purpose. Yeah. I don't know.
I feel like you're slowly changing.
But I don't want to be influenced by what you said, because I'm still in the camp of straight privilege is a thing.
But there's no denying that it's a thing.
You know, me having to tell my parents that I'm in a relationship and worrying about the reaction isn't something I signed up for.
Yeah.
And if that straight pill can give me peace and quiet and arguably a bit more tameness and boredom in my life, then I don't know.
Yeah. But the reality is,
you've caught me on a good day.
The reality is, you've got the life that you've got now, and that's
the way I was born.
Yeah.
I just wish everyone knew that. I know that in however many decades' time, it will be proven.
Yeah.
That you are born gay.
But where is it not proven that?
Well, but there's because no one's found the gay gene.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
Well,
I'm sure someone might correct me.
You know what? I don't know if I believe that.
Don't start with me.
I don't know if I believe that. I think
someone made you gay?
No. I just think it's an accumulation of things that happen.
Like experiences.
Yeah.
Can you give me like?
No, I can't. I actually can't. But
Did you like football?
No, but not liking football doesn't make you gay.
I think it does.
No, I get what you're saying. Because
I displayed no stereotypical heterosexual traits at any point in my life.
Yeah, I get it. And listen, I'm absolutely here to be. Maybe I'm just playing devil's advocate.
But this is what the debates are still are happening, and I will never forget. Gobby 18-year-old doing my A-levels said to my sociology teacher, who sociology is all about the study of society. And I said to him, I was like, sir, you know, given your theories on society, because it's the view that we are all shaped by experiences and people around us, you must think that gay people are influenced by society. They're not. It's nature, not nurture.
You mean it's nurture, not nature?
Nurture, not nature.
Yeah.
Articulated that all terribly, but you know what I mean?
I get what you're saying.
And he, as a teacher, in his teaching capacity, really struggled. But I could tell that that's what he believed.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like I've got a long battle.
And how would you feel if someone said there is no gay gene, that is it? It's just your experiences, your traumas, your surroundings.
But in the words of Tal Booker, episode 2, part 2, if it was a choice, this would not be it.
I'm not saying it's a choice.
No, but by saying I wasn't born this way makes it a lifestyle choice by default.
Because I think I disagree with you. It's absolutely not a choice. Let me get that straight. It's not a choice. It's not my choice.
No.
And it's not yours.
No.
So in this room, it's not a choice. However, I think things can happen. And I'm not coming at this with any scientific research or any, any degree in anything valuable. I think experiences can happen that then alter your genetic makeup, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting debate, but it's
an annoying debate. I wish it wasn't one.
Yeah.
But in short, I'd probably think for a couple more seconds before the pill was presented to me.
Well, I hope that you one day get to a place where you would turn down that pill. I feel like part of it is reluctance to accept that maybe you wouldn't take it.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
I don't know, but you're not the only guest. As we know, there was another podcast guest that said the same, and I think it comes from the ideals that heteronormativity present are actually quite nice and easy. You know,
there's no
man marries wife.
There's no denying that.
And maybe part of it is the pill would certainly make my childhood a happier memory. And it would also make my parents.
But if you
happy.
could take the pill without it changing anything in the past, would you? Because
that's an interesting. That's
because
a different question.
I would assume you'd say no, because if it doesn't change anything in the past, then what's the point?
Agree. I'll agree with you on that.
Thank you.
So maybe 15-year-old James would take the pill.
Yeah.
32-year-old James less likely.
Yeah. It's still a possibility. It's a possibility. Yeah.
Speaking of all things medical,
you
recently had a really life-changing experience, actually, that I think is really, really fresh and raw. So it's up to you how much you want to go into it. But tell me what happened. When was it? This week?
No,
week?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, what happened?
So as I've spoken about many, many times in many different platforms, that kind of the feeling of difference growing up, and always being different, and something that's very much carried itself into adulthood and to kind of where I am now. I guess I sought out a diagnosis. Well, I didn't seek out a diagnosis. I sought out an assessment for ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder. And lo and behold, not to my surprise, I was diagnosed with Asperger's, which interestingly, a friend of mine said that it's only news to me, as in most people in my life would kind of not be surprised by that. I wasn't surprised by that, and actually it's not news to me. It just feels like something that I need to not declare, but something that is new, because it is new, because it's one way feeling another thing. It's another thing having a clinical diagnosis of the thing. And it was really quite emotional, actually, because again, there was a period of mourning, a very short one, albeit a very short period of mourning in the life that maybe I would have had if this would have been picked up earlier.
What would have been different?
I don't know. I just feel like something would have been.
Do you think a bit more understanding?
I think a bit more understanding. The reality is I've not had an easy time, and again, an easy time throughout my life, and And again, like we were saying before, I'm incredibly privileged and incredibly lucky in a lot of ways. And there's no getting away from that. But the reality is I have had my own set of struggles. And maybe that would have been different. It was also emotional in a positive way. I had a lot of feelings of gratitude to specifically my brothers, obviously my sister as well, but she kind of fits in the dynamic a bit differently. But definitely to my brothers, who we are very close in age and essentially experienced all of childhood together. Because I think I was shielded quite a lot from a lot of stuff, being in the middle of those two. And also I was able to kind of learn a lot from them, that maybe I wouldn't have been able to learn had I been on my own with the disorder, or, you know, whatever you want to call it. And it's been quite difficult since the diagnosis, because there's something called masking, which is quite an obvious expression, and that is the act of masking the ism, or the things that I do, and I'm going to talk about myself in particular, that the things that I do that maybe I know aren't socially not acceptable, but a bit different. And so in the masking, like, again, going back to my brothers, you know, I picked up a lot of their traits and their attributes because I struggled with a lot of them, specifically socially, and, you know, with communication. I've kind of learned how to communicate in a socially acceptable way off the back of them, and how to function socially off the back of two very sociable brothers. And after the diagnosis and after doing some research, there is a period of unmasking which happens, which I have felt massively, and that is essentially the shedding of the social norms that I've picked up that are not normal to me. For example, the eye contact, there's a
as in you didn't typically
I've been very aware that eye contact is like a part of social, whatever you want to call it. So I've always tried extra hard to make eye contact.
Really?
And now since the diagnosis, like a lot of those things that I've tried hard to do for so long, now that I'm aware of the diagnosis and I'm comfortable, it's kind of like finally saying, great, like I don't need to pretend anymore. So there's a lot of things that have shifted in me that I haven't felt like I've needed to pretend anymore. A lot of the ways that I communicate, a lot of the ways that I converse with people, like I struggle when I have conversations. I really struggle with like back and forth conversation. I'm much more of a responder. So if someone asks me something, I've got no issues responding. But for so long, I've only ever asked people, oh, what about you? Or like, how was your day? Or because I know that that's a socially acceptable thing to do, not because it comes naturally to me. Actually. It's not that I don't care. The reality is I don't really care, but not because I don't want to care, but because it just doesn't really fall within my ability. And there's a lot of things that like, so one of the big things for me is anyone that knows me will know that I really struggle with eating. And that is because I'm a really, really fussy eater. And that is,
in what way? Is there just like food groups you won't eat?
In the way that I could pick 6 things that I've eaten my whole life that even now turning 30 this year has really not changed that much from when I was a kid. That is part of the disorder. Finally, I can use that as an excuse when people shout at me for not trying new foods. Like,
I've got Asperger's.
Yeah, I've got Asperger's. Sorry. Also, like when I'm out and like, if I'm in like a really overstimulating environment, like I really struggle. I went to a restaurant not that long ago and it was super loud. I literally couldn't eat my food because it was so loud that I couldn't function properly. So there's a lot of things like that, which now I kind of feel it's almost as if I feel a little bit more confident saying the truth rather than pretending that I'm fine or that I do things a certain way. I don't know if I'm articulating it in a good kind of way.
And when you told me about this just before we started recording, I said to you is like my experiences of people with Asperger's, and again, counsel me if this isn't appropriate, but I did Camp America for 4 years, and there was like a program for like people with special needs and autistic kids in particular, and there were a few, and it's a spectrum as we know, and Asperger's sits on it, and my experience of kids in particular with Asperger's was like quite extreme. And I think when you were, and I said to you as well, like I knew you as a kid, and you were different, but in a very sweet way. Like you were just a sweet boy compared to your other to your brothers who were just like not as sweet. Still very lovely, obviously. So I would, and you said like people who are very close to you are like, oh, that's not a surprise. Whereas I'm like, you know, as you were articulating it, I was like, okay, that makes sense. But talking to you now, you know, you're so articulate. You've never had a problem with careers. Like you're talented.
Well, I think because the thing is, it's not a cognitive impairment, and it's a social thing, and the reality is, if I look at it. And someone else looks at my social life throughout the 29 years, that has massively been impacted. I hugely struggle to maintain friendships. God knows how you start a new friendship, because I don't fucking know. I do not know how that even happens.
Is that something you're actively worried about?
I'm not actively worried about it. I'm aware of it. I'm not worried about it because I've managed this far being the way that I am. So it just is what it is.
And that's something, again, I think happens with age. It's like you realise that friends are not really friends, they're just numbers.
And I think that kind of came to me in the sadness of after the diagnosis was kind of looking back at how I've always struggled with friendships. Because the reality is I have a lot of people in my life that I love a lot that I don't really have that much of a friendship with anymore, which is kind of sad to me. And yes, it does take two people and all of that stuff, but I'm very aware that I have a big part to play in that. And it's not even with friends, with family members. I was telling you before that I don't speak to Eyal that much, and that's not because I don't want to. That's because I really struggle to communicate. And my grandma, who I love dearly, I don't speak to that much, and that's not because I don't want to. That's because I really, really struggle with the communication side of it. It also brings up issues in my relationships that it has done in the past that I never really knew what that was, but being in the relationship that I'm in now, I can see how that has impacted my previous ones and how it impacts my current one. And again, it all comes down to my communication, that I don't kind of read cues in the right way. I don't take things that are said in the right way. If someone's in a bad mood, I automatically think they're in a bad mood at me, regardless of what's going on, because the reality is I'm not that important. But if I bumped into you in the street and you were in a mood because something had happened to you that day, my reality of that would be that James doesn't like me. I've done something to James that he has an issue with. And there's
and for other people that could be misinterpreted, because I think you've always been called like a bit off. As in people think you're moody with them.
People, exactly. And throughout school, everyone called me arrogant. But that's purely because I did not know how to communicate or socialise with people. I just wasn't very good at it. And that can come off as
I just thought you were quiet.
Yeah, that can come off as quiet, a bit aloof, a bit arrogant, like not really wanting to interact with people. But that's not, like, on the inside, I really do want to do all those things. I just find it hard to do that. And there's a lot of similarities between the symptoms of anxiety and the symptoms of depression and what happens with Asperger's, and I assume, having not known that much about it, other disorders on the ASD spectrum. But anxiety is a symptom of Asperger's as well as depression, and I've had those two things since I was, as long as I can remember, but medicated since I was 17. And anxiety is something I massively struggle with today still, and there's no reason for it. I wake up in the morning, I'm immediately anxious. My day starts with anxiety. Even now when I can understand being in active addiction, having so many things happening, so many secrets going on that yes, it's anxious for anyone. But even now, where I'm living as honestly as I ever have done and as possible, I still have the anxiety as if I'm hiding a £100 a day drug problem and a dead body in the back room. Like, that is genuinely how I live. And I think that comes from...
And what are you, if you know, what are you anxious about?
Everything.
Because I think people have things in their
everything
heads,
and
like
nothing.
Health anxiety or...
Everything and nothing. My anxieties are social, financial, work-related, relationship-based, everything and nothing at the same time, because the reality is everything is fine.
But I love that you self-counsel yourself to bring you back down to earth.
Because I have
even
to.
A lot of people, it's a shame that you have that anxiety still, because a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah, but I need to, because if I don't, then I can't function. I can't function. Like, I try and...
And how do you, other than self-talk, I guess, and obviously you've got some medication, but what practices do you do?
I try and meditate, and I have been for a while, and I find it super helpful. It's not easy, because it's definitely something you learn. You have to keep bringing yourself back to the present moment, and that is what meditation is all about, is being in the moment. And beyond my bedroom, when I'm not meditating, I'm not zen at all, but I really try and start my day like that, because it just sets me up for a good day. And I've now gotten to the point where if I don't meditate, I'm anxious about not meditating. So it's kind of counterproductive.
Like the OCD vibe.
But I think all of these things fall within ASD, and like you said, it is a spectrum. And I think on some levels I'm high functioning on that spectrum. Yeah. But on other levels I really do struggle. And I think,
and they're hidden, right?
Because I've been able to master them for so long. And I think because maybe I don't look like someone that would have Asperger's or ASD or speak like it, or like you said, I've always had a job or kind of been working at my career and stuff
to a really high level.
Well, I mean, arguably to a high level. Doesn't always feel like it's a high level, but
I think it is a high level.
Thank you. But I've always been able to mask it. When I got the diagnosis, it wasn't news to me. There was a massive sense of relief that finally someone is acknowledging it, because it's a set of feelings that I've felt forever, and not always, but definitely over the past few years, that being in recovery, that I haven't been able to mask these things with drugs and with alcohol and with other behaviours. That it's definitely come to the surface more. I've definitely been shut down when I've said that I feel this way, because I'm an addict and I'm an attention seeker, and I'm always looking for something to kind of excuse me of the way that I am. I felt really strongly in the sense that I don't believe that this is that, because I genuinely do feel different, and I genuinely do feel like there has been a point of difference between me and other people.
And and
I've never been able to put my finger on it.
And it wasn't necessarily only the gay thing.
Yes, exactly. It wasn't that, and it wasn't the addiction, and so therefore, because since coming out, like, I would have expected to feel much better than I have done, and because I didn't, it told me that there was still
cloud.
And because I didn't, there was, and obviously I did for a bit, because the excitement and the adrenaline of something new, but when that faded away, I still felt the difference, and that told me that there was still something that I needed to uncover. And who knows, maybe there'll be something else, maybe there'll be a part 4.
Yeah.
Who knows?
When you next go to the doctors, let me know, and I'll bring a camera with me.
Yeah.
But in real terms, it doesn't change anything, does it?
It doesn't change anything.
It just gives you some sort of validation.
It's only really for me, and if I wanna,
and everyone listening.
It's only really for me as a better understanding of myself, and maybe someone else that's like, you know what, maybe I have that.
Yeah, my thoughts was when you were describing that, I was like, fuck.
Yeah, it's obvious. Like I like I've said to you, I'm still waiting for my full diagnosis report, which can take up to like 4 weeks from the initial thing, to really get a better understanding of where I sit on the spectrum and where I, you know, obviously I know my own stuff, but like to articulate every symptom that I have is kind of difficult.
But I think it's super important that people like you talk about it and like...
Yeah.
Because it could be really, really impactful and important, because I'm sure there are people out there who don't have necessarily maybe the same confidence as you to talk about it so openly. So I think it's a great...
Do you know what? It doesn't... My need to talk about things doesn't come from confidence. It comes from... I think it comes from shame and wanting to like abolish that shame within myself. If I talk about it, then it's hard to feel shame about something that you're so open about.
Yeah, you're like unleashing it. It's not something that holds you.
Yeah, and people say that to me about, especially about the first and second episode that we did, about how brave I am and how confident I must feel. And it's not. It doesn't come from confidence. It comes from shame, and comes from not wanting to carry that shame anymore.
The whole thing before I started the podcast, I was someone asked me to speak at something, and I was being interviewed publicly. It was an Instagram live.
Yeah.
And I went in. I was just like, shame this, trauma that. I hate being gay, but also like it. And I was like, fuck, everyone's heard me talk for the first time. And I went bright red, closed down the Instagram, and I went for a 45-minute walk in the freezing cold, in the rain, because I just needed to calm myself down. And it was like a real... The only experience I can compare it to was the actual coming out when I was 18, because it was something that I just unleashed. Yeah. And it was very, very self-serving. It wasn't for the benefit of all the listeners. Sure. You know, granted, I'm sure some kid was like, thanks. But I was like, to be totally honest, I did it for me.
It was for you, for sure. That's the same reason I did those podcasts, was for me. And it just...
But there was nothing like that.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, if I was 18... and this is me toot my own horn.
Yeah.
And I heard this conversation.
Yeah.
I would feel a whole lot better than how I felt, because I truly felt like I was the only gay person in the entire world.
Yeah.
I still sometimes feel like that.
Yeah. No, I get it.
It's our lived experience.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to part with?
No.
You've said enough.
Yeah,
we'll leave the rest for part 4.
Yeah.
Thank you, as always, for your time
Pleasure.
And your candour and your vulnerability, and just for being you. So
thank you.
Until next time.
Thank you as always for taking the time to listen to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I did making it. As always, don't forget to leave a rating or a review if you enjoyed it. And of course, if you want to share it with friends and family, then that won't go amiss either. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you very soon.